Welcome to WhiskyCast, cask strength conversation featuring news and interviews from the world of whiskey. I'm Mark Gillespie, and this is episode number 1170 for July 12th, 2026. Coming up in a few minutes.
When you arrive on Skye, there's 10,000 people living there. But, a team of distillers wasn't awaiting our glorious arrival.
That's just one of the growing pains Torabhaig Distillery on Scotland's Isle of Skye faced when it started production in 2017. We'll get the Torabhaig origin story from Bruce Perry later on WhiskyCast In-Depth, and taste the distillery's latest release, Torabhaig Taigh, too. It's all ahead on this week's WhiskyCast, whiskey's longest-running and most awarded podcast series. Let's get started with the week's news. It's brought to you by Dewar's. An unusual twist in the Uncle Nearest receivership this week. Receiver Philip Young Jr. filed a counterclaim against Farm Credit Mid-America, the Kentucky-based bank that loaned Uncle Nearest more than $100 million. Young claims Farm Credit enabled financial fraud to go undetected for years at Uncle Nearest. The counterclaim was a response to Farm Credit's original lawsuit against Uncle Nearest, the Nearest Green Distillery, and Fawn and Keith Weaver a year ago that led to the appointment of Young as a receiver. The Weavers blame both Farm Credit and former Chief Financial Officer Michael Senzaki for the financial problems that led to their default, but this is the first time the receiver has sided with the Weavers in blaming Farm Credit. He claims Farm Credit was negligent in administering the loan and ignored red flags that should have prompted an investigation. Court documents indicate Senzaki admitted to Uncle Nearest's outside investigators that he falsified monthly financial reports starting in 2022 and fabricated board minutes showing Fawn and Keith Weaver's approval for unauthorized loans. At one point, Senzaki was borrowing money from Farm Credit every 2 weeks without any confirmation from Fawn Weaver until, quoting now, the fraud became impossible to hide. Senzaki has not been charged with any crime in connection with his tenure at Uncle Nearest. Friday, Young filed a quarterly update with the court confirming that the Weavers had been terminated effective June 1st, and his filing claims that has made day-to-day operations significantly smoother. Negotiations with a potential buyer are continuing, with hopes of completing a sale in the next 30 to 60 days. In other news, Macleod Distillers is the latest distiller to cut back on production in the wake of sluggish whiskey sales worldwide. The company will cut production by 30% at its Glengoyne and Rosebank distilleries. No word on any job cuts. Production will continue at full scale at Taigh Distillery to make up for stocks lost because of on-site engineering work in recent years. And Macleod's new distillery in Una, India, will continue at full scale producing bulk blended malt for use in Indian whiskies. Another word of warning about cask investment schemes. The UK's Advertising Standards Authority has upheld complaints about misleading advertising from Cap Group International Limited. The company was formerly known as the London Cask Company, and it's the second time the watchdog has sanctioned the company. The latest complaints were over misleading Trustpilot reviews and inadequate and misleading information on the company's website. A New York congresswoman is calling for a federal investigation into the Canadian provincial boycott of American spirits and wines. Representative Claudia Tenney calls the boycott discriminatory and wants the U.S. Trade Representative to launch an investigation that could lead to sanctions against Canada. She says American distillers, brewers, and wineries deserve fair access to Canadian markets. And speaking of trade, India is set to cut its 150% import tariffs this month on UK whiskey and gin under the landmark free trade agreement reached earlier this year. The agreement goes into effect on Wednesday and will see the tariff cut to 75% immediately and fall to 40% by 2036. That's to give Indian spirits producers time to adjust to the changing market. The Scotch Whisky Association estimates the deal could boost Scotch whisky exports to India by £1 billion over the next 5 years, while supporting around 1,200 jobs. And how about some happy news now? The Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame has announced its class of 2026. The 7 inductees include Shane Baker and Pat Heist of Wilderness Trail Distillery, our good friend bourbon author Fred Minnick, the late W.L. Lyons Brown Sr., and George Garvin Brown II of Brown-Forman, former Kentucky state lawmaker John Schickel, and Kentucky Distillers Association President Eric Gregory. Gregory will also receive the Parker Beam Lifetime Achievement Award, the KDA's highest honor. The induction ceremony will be on September 14th in Louisville. New whiskeys to mention this week, and we'll start with an old one. Gordon & MacPhail is releasing its final cask of Talisker single malt under its Connoisseur's Choice label, which has featured bottlings from nearly 100 Scottish distilleries since it was launched in 1968. The Talisker cask was filled on March 3, 1987, and matured for 39 years in a refill sherry butt. 451 bottles are available worldwide at a price of £1,250 each. Suntory is bringing back Hibiki 12-year-old for the first time in 11 years, back when limited stocks forced Suntory to withdraw it from the market. It's matured in a combination of American, Spanish, and Japanese Mizunara oak and blends whiskeys from Yamazaki, Hakushu, and Chita distilleries. It'll be a travel retail exclusive, starting out at Paris's Charles de Gaulle Airport, Singapore's Changi International, and Dubai International. In Paris, it's priced at €210 a bottle. And Laphroaig is bringing back the iconic 15-year-old expression as a permanent addition to the range. The 15-year-old was discontinued back in 2009 and replaced with the 18-year-old Laphroaig, that was brought back briefly in 2016 for Laphroaig's 200th anniversary. It's now bottled at 46% ABV instead of the original's 43% and will sell in the U.S. for $89 a bottle. The Clipper Round the World Yacht Race is stopping in Oban, Scotland this week, and Oban Distillery has released a distillery-exclusive bottling to mark the occasion. Little Curiosities features Oban town landmarks on the label, and the distillery is sponsoring a scavenger hunt in which visitors can claim a special Oban prize by finding 10 of the icons printed on the bottle. The bottles are also signed by Ronnie Whiteford, who recently retired as distillery manager after a long career of service. They're priced at £220 each. Sazerac's Barton 1792 distillery is adding 2 new whiskeys to its lineup, 1792 Kentucky Straight Rye Whiskey and the 15-year-old 1792 XV. It's the first ever rye from 1792 and will be available nationally at a price of $39.99 a bottle. XV will be a global travel retail exclusive at select airports, including Los Angeles International, San Francisco, and South Korea's Incheon Airport. The price tag is $249.99. Texas's Garrison Brothers Distillery will release its annual Laguna Madre bourbon on Saturday, August 8th at the distillery in Hyde, Texas. This year there's also a cask-strength single-barrel version available. The first 1,000 bottles will go on sale at the distillery, with the rest to be available at select retailers and through the Garrison Brothers website starting August 14th. The 2026 Laguna Madre will be priced at $349.99, while the cask-strength version will cost $409.99. Whiskey Gypsy has a unique collaboration with Gibson Guitars out now. Guitar makers have been known for using used whiskey barrel staves in their creations, and now Whiskey Gypsy has flipped the script. It used toasted maple tonewood offcuts from Gibson to finish 2 different tonewood whiskeys. Volume 1 is bottled at 54.5% ABV and comes in a custom Gibson case at a price of $799. While Tonewood the Collective is a lighter expression at 51.5% ABV, it's priced at $199 a bottle. Colorado's Breckenridge Distillery has a new rye whiskey distilled at 9,600 feet above sea level. It's from an 80% rye mash bill and is bottled at 50% ABV. The recommended retail price is $40 a bottle. And Australia's Callington Mill Distillery is out with a new batch of Blue Lake Lodge single malt. The casks for this single malt sit out in the open air to mature in the Central Highlands of Tasmania. It's matured in first fill casks and is priced at $295 Australian a bottle. Finally, Buffalo Trace is getting into the camping business with Camp Buffalo Trace. The experience blends bourbon education with summer camp-inspired activities, including a bung driving relay, blind tasting, and a whiskey woodcraft workshop. There's a day camp and overnight camping experience with 200 spots available through an online sweepstakes. The contest ends July 21st at noon. We've posted a link for more details in the show notes for this episode at WhiskyCast.com. And that's where you can keep up on the latest whiskey news all week long. The news is brought to you by Dewar's.
Throughout the years, Dewar's has created some incredible whiskeys. But our new Dewar's 12-year-old, that one's a personal favorite. It's the kind of scotch that earns praise from the pros, but still feels right at home in the middle of a good night with friends. Every pour opens up with notes of vanilla, toffee, baking spice, and a smooth oak finish. It's rich, it's approachable, and it has a way of bringing people together. Whether it's around the table, the fireplace, or just wherever the night happens to take you. Look, the glasses may hold the whiskey, but the whiskey, that's what holds the moment. Please enjoy responsibly. Copyright 2025. Dewar's is a trademark. Imported by John Dewar & Sons Company, Coral Gables, Florida. Blended Scotch whiskey, 40% alcohol by volume.
Let's open up the calendar now and see what's happening around the world of whiskey. The Kensington Wine Market in Calgary, Alberta, has an Aaron whiskey tasting this Tuesday night. Hard Truth Distilling in Nashville, Indiana, has its annual Bourbon and Barbecue Festival this coming weekend. And Saturday brings us the monthly Whiskey on the Waterfront party at Sagamore Spirit Distillery in Baltimore, Maryland. If you've ever wanted to get certified as a bourbon expert, Moonshine University in Louisville is hosting a Stave and Thief Society Executive Bourbon Steward course on the 24th. Tasmanian Whiskey Week runs from August 1st through the 9th around Hobart, Australia, and the Whiskey Fringe is August 7th through the 9th in Edinburgh, Scotland. If you're organizing a whiskey event, let us know about it. We'll add it to the calendars at WhiskyCast.com and in the WhiskyCast community app. WhiskyCast In-Depth is brought to you by Glendalough Irish Whiskey. For decades, Talisker was the only distillery on Scotland's Isle of Skye, but in 2017, the upstart Torabhaig Distillery fired up its stills for the first time. The distillery has released several expressions in the last couple of years, but they're a precursor to the latest release, Torabhaig Taigh, Scots Gaelic for home, and it's the purest example yet of the distillery's house style. I talked with Torabhaig's Bruce Perry recently at a dinner in New York City. Give me the Torabhaig origin story.
The Torabhaig origin story. Well, that goes back to, probably goes back a very, very long way. But in 2013, 2014, our now whiskey maker, Neil MacLeod Matheson, who is a MacLeod originally of the islands, and he knew of this old ruined cattle steading that had two water sources, and that was a real potential site to be a distillery. And we were fortunately able to acquire this and restore the old cattle steading. It was a 4-year project to a position where we were distilling in January 2017. But that's really the key, because the Isle of Skye is very mountainous, so most of the water always disappeared into the sea. We needed water, and this had two water sources, so that was the key.
How does the water supply compare to that other distillery on Skye?
Which other distillery on Skye? No, I mean, I think in a way it doesn't really matter, because once the water is cleaned up, it's water. It's actually the economics of having a water supply that are the most important. It's very difficult to know, because I think it's unlike France, where you've got terroir, real terroir. We would have to be using the same yeast, distilling the same way, fermenting the same way, in the same size vats made of the same material to really know the difference. There's too many other permutations going on for you to say, oh, it's this difference or it's that difference. So we wouldn't know.
Were there growing pains early on?
Yes, the weather. The weather was horrendous. So really, I think the project took 6-9 months, a year, possibly even longer, to come to fruition than had been planned. But the weather was atrocious. Well, 1 year it was anyway, one summer. It's been, relatively speaking, of course, there's been accidents, mistakes along the way, but relatively speaking, plain sailing.
Happy accidents?
Funny accidents. Nothing that a bit of Schadenfreude didn't resolve. Yeah, we started off with because when you arrive on Skye, there's 10,000 people living there. But, a team of distillers wasn't awaiting our glorious arrival. So we had to decide what we were going to do. And we were very fortunate in our choice of a consultant. And he came on board and he was prepared to really write the manual on how to work the distillery, if you like. And this gave us a wonderful, wonderful opportunity where we placed an advert in the local press, the West Highland press, that said, roughly translated, it said, team of distillers needed for new distillery at Torabhaig, no experience necessary. And so we started day one with a team of 9 novices and one person who knew what they were doing. So, of course, there was the odd accident along the way. I think we managed to tip 4,000 litres of beer into the sea one afternoon because I'm guessing the tap opened the other way. Little accidents, but really it's turned into the most wonderful team. Now it's like a family because everybody had each other's backs. And that's the joy of it. It's now 9 people who really do know very, very well indeed what they're doing, and it's got a real family feel to it, and I love that.
Tell me about the new release, Taigh.
Taigh is, I like to call it our first apotheosis. It's the culmination of everything that's gone before. With our journey to 10-year-old, the whiskey was behaving itself very, very well, very well. And it informed us that Torabhaig was ready for a permanent release, really ahead of our planned schedule. Really, when we were imagining Torabhaig, the first permanent release was always going to be the 10-year-old. But we're ready now. And like a child going to school, you send it when it's ready. And so Torabhaig Taigh came into our conscience about a year and a half ago. And has come to fruition now. It's our first permanent reference. We've used a wee bit Madeira cask just to for a little bit of roundness, a little bit of smoothness, if you like, and it really bears all the signatures of Torabhaig: the smoke with taste, the elegant floral interpretation of heavy peat. But smoke with taste is an interesting phrase because I think it needs explaining. But the peat, whilst very heavy, is a very elegant interpretation. And because of that, you're able to taste other characteristics. There's lots of fruit going on in there. There's all sorts of different things. So this smoke with taste references the sort of complexity of it. But it's a very fine, elegant whiskey.
Is this what you would say is the Torabhaig Distillery character?
Yes.
Nice short answer. When will you come out with the 10-year-old? You're still a couple of years away, right?
We are. When it will land here in the United States, I'm struggling to predict that at the moment. I'm going to say the middle to, quarter 3, quarter 4 of 2028 would be my best guess, but I actually don't know at the moment.
Any plans for expansion?
Impossible. Can't go up, can't go down, can't go into the river, and can't go the other way either.
So you're committed with what you've got?
We have no choice. We are, but equally, we have no choice. Yes, we are committed with what we've got, very committed with what we've got.
And very happy with it, I assume.
Ecstatic, yes. It's one of the most beautiful distilleries in the world, and that is part of the joy. You drive in, you can't help be happy, you can't help smile. It's wonderful.
For more information, there's a link to the Torabhaig website in the show notes for this episode at whiskycast.com. Next week, we'll hear from Glengoyne Distillery manager Robbie Hughes. And that's WhiskyCast In-Depth, brought to you by Glendalough Irish Whiskey.
Our story begins in the wilds of County Wicklow, the Garden of Ireland, a place where nature moves slowly and meaningfully. Some whiskies blend in. Glendalough Double Barrel stands apart. I'm Rowdy Rooney, head distiller here at Glendalough, and I personally oversee our whisky making process from start to finish. We do things slowly, and we do them right. We start with a smooth, single-grain Irish whisky. We age it in flame-charred American oak for soft vanilla and a honeyed depth. Then we finish it in Oloroso casks from a small bodega in Spain. Casks we season and ship ourselves to make sure the wood is still alive with character when it arrives. That kind of care gives Glendalough Double Barrel its rich layers of dried fruit, warm spice, and signature smoothness. This is a whisky at its own pace, and it's worth every second. This is Glendalough Double Barrel, crafted to stand apart.
This week's tasting notes are brought to you by Lost Lantern Whiskey. Let's start off with the new Torabhaig Taigh. It's peated to 78 parts per million of phenols, and it's bottled at 46% ABV. The nose has a gentle peatiness, with touches of heather, dried flowers, and a hint of honey. The taste is peaty and phenolic with citrus rinds, heather and honey, and the finish is long and peaty. It's a very nice dram. I'm scoring the Torabhaig Taigh a 93. Next up, the new Bullet 20-year-old rye whiskey. This one is bottled at cask strength, 68.5% ABV, and is the same 95.5 mash bill as the younger Bullet rye expressions. The nose has a heavy dose of dark chocolate, along with coffee beans, cooked fruits, subtle spices, and oak. The taste is peppery and bold with clove and cinnamon balanced by dark chocolate and a touch of oak tannins. The finish is long, dry, and astringent, with lingering touches of black pepper and dried fruits. I'm scoring the Bullet Rye 20-year-old whiskey a 92. I received a sample this week of the latest Old Fitzgerald Bottled in Bonds Decanter Series expression. The spring 2026 release was distilled during the spring of 2016, and of course it's bottled at 50% ABV, or 100 proof. The nose is aromatic and well-balanced with touches of caramel, oak tannins, soft spices, leather, tobacco, and dried fruits. The taste is thick and oily with black pepper, cinnamon, and allspice notes, complemented by dried fruits and oak tannins. The finish, long and spicy. I'm scoring the spring 2026 Old Fitzgerald Bottled in Bonds Decanter Series a 93. This week's tasting notes are brought to you by Lost Lantern Whiskey and the United States of Bourbon, a groundbreaking blend of bourbons from all 50 states. Lost Lantern co-founders Nora Ganley Roper and Adam Polanski spent more than 5 years visiting distilleries to find bourbons worthy of representing each state. It's one of the most ambitious projects in American whiskey, and in keeping with Lost Lantern's commitment to full transparency, every one of the distilleries is listed on the label. Together they create a singular portrait of the diversity, innovation, and character defining American whiskey today. Find out more at LostLanternWhiskey.com. Lost Lantern, shining a light on the independent spirit. Let's open up the inbox now and see what people are talking about this week. Had several comments on last week's episode with distillers Eric Wolf and Alan Bishop about their recreation of a colonial-era rye whiskey recipe. Whiskey Mikey 79 posted in the WhiskyCast community app, "Great episode. I'd really like to try the rye whiskey made from that recipe. Sounds very intriguing." After the Uncle Nearest update in last week's episode, Hugo Dart posted from Brazil, "The reported firing of Fawn Weaver sounds like very good news for Uncle Nearest. I hope the upcoming sale of the distillery allows it to finally get back on track." Now, we post a link to each week's podcast in the WhiskyCast community app, and Whiskey Dev wrote to let us know about a problem. Hi, Mark. Tried to access the link above from Thailand, where I am this week. It doesn't load on my mobile. I got on my computer and realized your entire website doesn't work from Thailand. Got an error message that the URL timed out. Had to use a VPN and then the site loaded fine. Just thought you might like to know. He also reported a problem visiting the site from Vietnam. Well, I can't explain that one, but we are taking it up with our web hosting service to see if they can explain it. If you're somewhere in the world and can't access the WhiskyCast website for a similar reason, please let us know about it. And if there's something else you'd like to share with whiskey lovers around the world, we'd love to hear from you. Download the free WhiskyCast community app from your app store and join the conversation. You'll also find WhiskyCast on X, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, and Facebook. Our email address is comments@whiskycast.com. Let's close out the show now with Behind the Label, our look at the history, science, and people who make whiskey unique. Why does it pay to check out the local liquor stores while you're traveling? Well, in addition to finding a bottle you may not be familiar with, you may just get a break on prices, depending on the taxes your home state charges on distilled spirits. The federal government charges a flat excise tax based on the amount of whiskey a distiller removes from bond for sale, but each state charges its own excise tax, and that tax can vary widely. Washington State has the highest tax rate at $36.68 per gallon, according to the Tax Foundation. Oregon and Virginia are the next highest in the $23 range. Both are control states, meaning the state controls distribution of alcoholic beverages, and in Virginia's case, the retail sales as well. The lowest taxes are in Wyoming and New Hampshire, which charge no excise tax on alcoholic beverages. If you're traveling along the Kentucky Bourbon Trail and buy a bottle, you're paying the 15th highest excise tax rate at $9.56 a gallon. But cross the Ohio River into Indiana, and you'll pay the 44th highest rate at just $2.68 a gallon. Ohio, another control state, charges even more than Kentucky at $12.33 per gallon. State taxes make up the biggest portion of the tax load on a bottle of whiskey, so it pays to look around while you're traveling. You may just get a cheaper price than you would at home. We've included a link to the Tax Foundation's website showing each state's excise tax rate in the show notes for this episode at whiskycast.com. And if you have something you'd like us to look at on an upcoming episode, just get in touch with us. That's all for this edition of WhiskyCast. You'll find links for the stories in this episode in our show notes at whiskycast.com. That's also where you'll find my tasting notes, the calendar of events, and much more. Don't forget to leave a review or rating for WhiskyCast in your favorite podcast app. It helps other listeners discover the show. We love to hear from you. Look for WhiskyCast on all of the major social media platforms. Download the WhiskyCast community app from your app store, or just email us. The address is comments@whiskycast.com. WhiskyCast is a production of Cask Strength Media, copyright 2026, and comes to you each week from the charming, yet regrettably dry town of Haddonfield, New Jersey. I'm Mark Gillespie, reminding you that when you drink, please drink responsibly. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you next week.